but I think getting three threes here into this Relentless Pursuit is just too good. Swain and Twisted Fate. Well, I don't think we want this in the opener. This is tempting. It's very powerful with this list. We do have some other early drops. Maybe we go with this. But we're likely up against the Swain Twisted Fate. It's kind of like a mid-rangey control list. It has a decent amount of removals, so this could be a bit sketchy, but we have a decent late game. Actually, I'd rather have, I think, had Harrowing over this, but today's video, we are playing the Elites list, and major credit for the list goes to the likes of Mogwai and Sir Termund. Sir Termund is the one who added the spice that made me want to try this list, and I've been really enjoying it ever since. Yeah, not much of a shocker there. So this is a list that tries to take advantage of the Fallen, the new card that was added. It gets cheaper every time you play an Elite, and then the additional spice on top of the Elite interaction and what Sir Termund from Twitter added to the list that I've been really enjoying is the addition of Harrowing, because it has a really cool combo. And at the end of the video, when I start talking about, you know, what's in the list and why it works, I'll cover that interaction there. But this is why I kept this in the opener. It's just such a powerful play on 4. I think we leave this back just because they kept their mana open. They can still hit this with something like a Fervor, but since we already know that they are also playing the deal 2 damage option, I didn't want them to like block this with a spider and get there. Now they might nuke it, but we shall see. We're gonna see if we can get ourselves in position for a good Relentless Pursuit. All right, so the TF comes down. So if we had attacked with this, they also could have blocked this and then hit us with the 1 to everything on the board. They had some flexibility. Turns out that's exactly what Twisted Fate does, provide flexibility. Very good at it. All right. We're not gonna take the bait there and pass. We have to keep developing our board. We're a very heavy board centric deck, so that wasn't great just because that got both of them down to 1 here. I assume they're gonna have some sort of follow-up. We actually might use the single combat. We're gonna, I think, make this play largely because I want to force out extra cards from them. Sure. Like, they could have just saved that card and let the single combat go off. I mean, I know that that gives them extra damage for Swain, and maybe that's their reasoning there. And there's actually a couple of different options here. I think we're going to be a bit greedy. We're going to develop. And then try to get in here with a pretty good Relentless Pursuit, I think. I'm a little sketchy on whether I want to send this in here, but I think now is the time if they use removal. So again, they might take this block. It's a shame that they got this one because that's going to eat another blocker. So we're going to go for the pursuit, see if this gets there. And it does, but no cool combo, so maybe we'll get it in game 2. Swain and Twisted Fate. I swear I'm not making this up. Oh. Oh, that's so tempting. All right, here's the thing. I'm probably going to lose this game, but since we already won one game and the entire point was to show off the combo, I think I'm going to do something horrible. I do not recommend this mulligan whatsoever, but we're going to just keep this as is. I might consider throwing this back, but honestly, that's fine. But we're going to keep this as is because we have the For the Fallen and we have the Harrowing. Keeping this in your opener isn't as asinine as it sounds, just because it's going to get super cheap. Keeping this is the suspect part. But these two together are such a crazy combo that I just kind of wanted to see if we could pull it off.
Approaching the battlefront.
That kind of just stalled their attack. So we're probably going to play up through 4, and then on 5 we're going to, I think, try to bank some spell mana so that we can do this going in. We will obviously like need to nuke some units, but all right. Bit of a tough call here. Like, on the one hand, if we attack with just the toughness units, they can only trade with 1, and we want to make that trade anyway. And by waiting for defense, we only benefit if we save that for this anyway. So I think we do this. I think we send our tough units, though this does kind of telegraph that we don't have the allegiance unit in hand, because if we did, then we would pass here, I think, 100%, because outside of an open attack, then we would play the allegiance unit and these at 3/3, then also value trade with this, right? So this card is great in this list, not just because it's an elite, but also because it really helps jam your For the Fallen countdown. So they do make this trade. I think they were kind of running that same thought process through their head as we were. So the downside here is because we don't have any way to buff these, Make It Rain is potentially pretty punishing. So we're gonna take damage here, but as long as these survive, we can at least threaten it next turn.
I'm actually here.
And so we want to do Harrowing on a turn where we are the attacker. Well, this is an interesting dilemma, and it's also a problem because we actually still don't have anything that blocks Swain at the moment. That's actually a bit problematic here.
You lack discipline.
Yeah, I think they're gonna go with blocks all around and then try to clean us up with a Make It Rain. But we get rid of the Spray Fin. If they actually hit us with the Make It Rain, we won't do the combo. I don't know, I kind of want to use this now. I think it's silly not to use it now. I wanted to, so the combo here is you play Harrowing, and then it makes a bunch of units, which makes For the Fallen basically become free, and then after your Harrowing attack, all those units die, and then you get free triggers. But I think getting three threes here into this Relentless Pursuit is just too good to pass up at the moment. because we can push a fair amount of damage. Now I assume either maybe this is double flock. Wow. All right.
They should thank you.
I mean, we're still gonna push.
How tedious.
We're just trying to get enough damage in where maybe Harrowing finishes him off. We'd also love to top deck another For the Fallen in this next couple turns, but
Keep up, keep up.
Garen's actually a pretty good top deck for us. Because Garen is kind of difficult for this deck to get rid of. They have to traditionally use 2 cards. All right, we don't have enough for Harrowing this turn.
Ready to do my part.
Cythria, isn't it? Keep up the good work.
But yeah, we're just searching for another For the Fallen to pair with this Harrowing at this point. Because it gives you a big attack followed by a bunch of free units. And that's what this does. This just tries to overwhelm the opponent with raw numbers. Now, the deck that we're playing against has done really well because they keep fanning out. So they've got a great way to, again, continue. Interesting. They've got a great way to slow us down, but we're playing this pretty much like a token deck. So this is very telling, because this means they're going to try to use a fervor or something equivalent. So we just have to figure out how we want to handle this. So if I do this, since it's going to die anyway,
Merely called in a greater game.
our Garen takes the damage.
Empire above all.
Swain levels, which is obviously a problem for future Swains, but at least we get this trade here. And so with 2, we're, I was gonna say, only really afraid of Ravenous Flock, but hey, that's actually pretty good to see on our end. You could play this, but since we're likely going to Harrowing this next turn anyway,
I need more hands.
I think holding on to it is fine. Gets us another draw. All right, top deck. Oh, Cythria is such a good potential play here. Man, Cythria is such a good potential play. Here I was all in on the Harrowing, but Cythria is so clutch. Because Cythria makes them only have 1 blocker in there, and well, 2, 1 for the Cythria obviously, but they still have so many cards in their hand, it's kind of unreal. I think we go the Cythria route. I think this changed my mind. Would have loved a For the Fallen, but I'd like the opportunity to push some damage. Unfortunately, Garen's not, he didn't strike last turn, so he's not leveling here, which would be beautiful. That's interesting. All right, I think we end up losing Garen here, but we have got to clean up this board, and it's not like we have a bunch of removal. So at the moment, we just have to crash units into their units. But I suspect that they are going to have removal now for Garen, because otherwise there's no reason for them to have stunned this. Oh, they've got guillotine, so they definitely have removal.
My sword is yours to command.
No doubt.
For Garen.
Victory.
And then some. I mean, I'm not even angry. I'm just impressed. Bravo.
I've whipped up something special.
I'm actually really surprised that they even went with the stun then. Like, I would have just let me attack and then hit this, and then you could have cracked all three. All right, that's a problem. That's a real problem.
I'll blow up the pieces.
Woohoo!
That is a clock. I really need another For the Fallen. This deck did such a good job of just chump blocking me over and over and over.
Artillery barrage.
That is not For the Fallen. Almost halfway through the deck too. All right. I think we end up losing this, gang. All right, so we know we're at least attempting this.
This is it.
Yeah, we can't survive the boat. We're gonna take 4 and then 3, and we don't have healing.
By my hand, Noxus rise. Grand General.
I mean, I'll have blockers, but I won't survive it to another attack. So the only way that I win would be what? I'd have to actually tap deck like Relentless Pursuit to be able to attack on their turn.
Their time has come.
We also have this overwhelm damage that we can't stop now. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Well, that's unfortunate, but this deck just did a great job of stalling. That's all it comes down to.
Ready for deployment.
They're gonna take the open attack here and get the victory. At least that's what I expect them to do.
Gave my all.
I think they're just cleaning things up just to be safe.
Fire! On Noxus.
And it's another Harrowing instead of For the Fallen. So good game. We'll go take a look at the list and I'll talk through the combo. We didn't get to do it, but this was good. That second game didn't exactly go the way I wanted it to, but the opponent had 2 things. 1, a lot of chump blockers, and 2, direct damage. And that's like the perfect combo for slowing this list down, assuming that you have enough of them, because this list is designed to just kind of have endless bodies. It goes wide, it throws body after body at the opponent. Yes, you can chump block it, but usually the idea is you just run them out of resources and run them out of the ability to block, because you have so many ways normally to kind of refuel. However, that second game, we only drew the 1 Fallen, unfortunately. We need, in that matchup, I think, a second For the Fallen to really try to close things out. And if your opponent has the ability to stall and survive the waves, it becomes a problem because you don't have any sort of over the top finisher. There's no reach. There's no way to get around their front line and slap them around a bit, because we don't have elusive. There's no fearsome. There's no overwhelm, really. I mean, we do have fearsome in the form of Cytheria, but we only drew the 1, and our opponent also just had blockers still for that. And there's no direct damage, obviously, like the Swain boat had. So overall, we went 1-1 against TF Swain, so I guess that's fine. The second time it just didn't go our way, but we're going to go through the list, talk about the inclusions. A lot of this builds itself because it's very elite heavy. It needs to be for the Fallen. And then when we get to the end, I'll talk about the interaction between some of these. So Cytherea, elite. Battlesmith, buffs elites. Defender, elite. I'm running 3 single combat, 2 relentless pursuit. I've seen these flip-flopped as well. I'm okay with either one. Redeemer, elite, also draws you a card. Elite, 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 and buff. Elite, Garen's your elite champion. Elite, literally, like I said, it builds itself. Like you do this. If you want to build this deck, you go elite, and then you kind of jam a bunch of them in. Now, you can see here there are some that we are not including, and it's mostly because you want to include the better options. And the reason that something like Vanguard Sergeant wins out in this 3 slot over Warden, let's say, for example, is that making the 4 Demacia is very relevant because you're running the Relentless Pursuits. If you don't have For the Fallen or Harrowing, sometimes you can, for Demacia, swing for a bunch, hit that Relentless Pursuit, swing for a bunch, etc., etc. So for the most part, you search elite, you put all the best ones in, and then you go from there. Now, this is not an elite, but it makes them, and this is a great card. So in theory, if you really wanted to make some changes, maybe you try to squeeze this in over Squire, because this is maybe the most questionable one, but it sometimes really, again, helps you with that early overwhelm game plan. Like if this is in your opening hand, being able to, you know, if you're attacking on odds, start with like Cytherea, you go into a 2-drop, and then on the next turn, you might go into another 2-drop into that. Again, you're going wide. This plays very much like Tokens did in the Elder Scrolls Legends, if you're familiar with that. You just keep playing units and keep refueling and doing the whole 9. Now, the top end of this list is the entire reason you play this. 1, For the Fallen. So 8 cost card, slow. However, whenever you summon an elite, you reduce the cost by 1, so inevitably it becomes very cheap. And then for each ally that died this round, you summon a Dauntless Vanguard. So that's just your standard 3/3 elite, no keyword. So why is this relevant? Well, 1, it lets you refuel against board wipes. It lets you refuel after very bloody combats. So if you're talking around, you know, turn 5-ish, and you swing 4 or 5 units into your opponent and they block and everything dies, you can very cheaply get 4 or 5 3/3s out of it, while your opponent then has to wait and spend far more mana to catch up. And so you are generating tempo in your favor there. That's really what this deck is about, is you use your kind of resource explosion, if you will, to generate tempo in your favor. Now, the other reason that this card is very relevant is because sometimes when you have multiples, you can really demoralize your opponent, because you can go in for like a bloody swing, and then maybe you reset with a second one and they hit you with a board wipe, and then you, if you've got another one, because your first one summons a bunch of units, which also reduces the cost of the second one in hand, if they then wipe the second one, you just restock again, and sometimes that just finishes a game. Now, the inclusion of the Harrowing is something that, again, I saw Sir Termund mention on Twitter, so credit to him for the Harrowing inclusion, and it's the icing on the cake. So in these very like bloody mid-range battles, if you can set it up so that you've got either a board that dies, and then on a following turn you get the Harrowing off or whatever to restock, and then you've got For the Fallen in your hand, what the Harrowing allows you to do is basically go from no board to full board, get an offensive turn, and then because all of these are ephemeral, after the combat, if they all strike and they die before your turn ends, you then get to replace everything that just died with a Vanguard. And again, because the Harrowing is likely summoning elites, because everything in your list with the exception of Battlesmith here is an elite, it's going to make this super cheap. So if this is already in your hand, you only need to have played like 2 or 3 units for this to likely become free, because on an empty board, Harrowing will get you 6. So let's say you're empty or close to empty. Again, you only need 5 or 6 units to get this very, very cheap. And then if you've already got a couple of ticks on it, it becomes free. And so again, you go into Harrowing, swing when everything dies, for the Fallen, repopulate your board, and that can be backbreaking in certain matchups, and especially against more traditional mid-range lists that do not have any sort of board sweep or board wipe. So a lot of this is just play a bunch of units. I think it's a lot of fun. It does have its drawbacks. As I said before, you don't have reach. There's nothing fancy to it, really. It's very linear kind of in its gameplay. Play units, play units, play units. That's obviously me being very broad and generic, right? I'm not saying that there aren't, you know, ways that you can spice up your gameplay a little bit. There's not, it's not a dumb deck, right? Like, there are still decisions that need to be made. It's not an autopilot thing. It's just a little bit less complicated than some other lists, but that's okay. Sometimes that's fine, and it's fun. It's really fun. It is not flashy, but just just playing these two, like the Harrowing and For the Falling, is just very satisfying. There's nothing like making your opponent in the course of one turn deal with 2 or 3 full boards of units and doing so in a very frustrating way. So anyway, I dig it. I like the list. It's a lot of fun. I wanted to share this just because I'd seen it mentioned on Twitter, so it's very relevant right now. And then we'll go back to some other lists that, again, I need to get out of the way, if that makes sense. Mist Wraiths is still not something I've covered, even though I'm playing it a lot personally, so I feel like I'm doing you all a disservice by not at least sharing the version I'm playing. But this is it for today, so if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.